Good night, my delightful humanoids. My name is Epic Torch, and tonight I have a story that is going to help you fall asleep more easily and peacefully. It will take you back in time to the land of the Greek gods. It's a story about love, the unreciprocated love between a god and a girl who desired to be like the moon, to be admired by all, but owned by none. She did not want to bind herself to that god especially, for he was an almighty god and seemed a bit arrogant for her liking. Before we begin, let's get comfortable on our bedding of choice, be it a mattress, sofa, or tent. So this can be a half hour of pure relaxation. You've had a busy day. It's time to regain control of your thoughts and feelings. Take the next few seconds to breathe deeply and allow your body to settle into your bed. As you lay down, take a few deep breaths. Inhale and exhale deeply as you watch your heart rate slow down. Stress and thoughts of the day fade away into nothingness. You feel them departing and you let go. Just put aside any worries. Release all your anxieties. In this moment, imagine that you are living in a time between the 9th and 12th century BC in ancient Greece, a land on earth at the crossroads of the heavens and the underworld. This place was ruled from Mount Olympus, the highest mountain in Greece, bordering Thessaly and Macedonia. Dear child, it is here, where the stories of all creatures are held inside a chest that holds the secrets to our past, present, and future. The keeper of all fates. There are so many stories waiting to be shared in this alluring place, a place where the sun shines brightly and the wind blows softly. a place where the water has many leisurely traveling boats that make various stops around the islands, all for the enjoyment of its visitors. I assume you may be interested in visiting this ancient land. So imagine you are given a guided tour by someone who is knowledgeable about the place and its territory. They journeyed through the cosmos from the past to be here with you. They give you the gift of time travel and retell to you ancient stories that have been passed down from creature to creature since Gaia, Mother Earth herself, was born. Would you like to get going now? Good, because this story takes you to a place a very long time ago in the distant past, when there were gods and goddesses and magical creatures all over our planet. It was a time when the sun and its rays were known as God Apollo. His equal at night was known as Goddess Diana, who showered our planet with the radiance of the moon. Apollo, the god of light, music, prophecies, healing, and poetry, and son of Zeus and Leto, had many duties. Chief among them was to drive a 4-horse chariot across the sky, to give light to all creatures across the land. He had to ride every day from one pole of the earth to the next, and enjoyed it so very much. He took delight in seeing how all its creatures woke up every morning and thanked him for the blessing of light. This might not be immediately obvious, but Apollo, as the Greek god of the sun, channeled much of his power to help plants and trees grow. He gave strength and power to every living thing. Without him, they could not have lived as prosperously. He was well respected by all. To amuse himself and some of his friends, he would speed across the sky on his chariot and sometimes carry out impressive tricks. He rejoiced, saying there was no one quite as impressive as him on his chariot. He invented the lyre, and with it gave humanity their first melody. The 10-string lyre was a harp that played beautiful music that made all creatures that heard Apollo play it gather round him in trance. There were many more tales that precede him. In fact, in Greek myths, Apollo was often described as the patron of all things past, present, and future. He sometimes fancied himself more powerful than Zeus, but never dared to say it out loud. Throughout his life, Apollo had many lovers. Many goddesses admired him and wanted to be close to him. Worldly women also looked up to the sky and admired Apollo. However, Apollo never pursued them, as they just flocked to him. Notwithstanding, this story is about the woman that charmed Apollo's heart and made him yearn for her friendship and love. The woman was Daphne, daughter of the river god. Daphne was a nymph, adventurous, easy on the eyes, and deeply spiritual. She lived around the pristine water. Nymphs were mortal divine beings without the same limitations that humans have. In fact, they were considered inferior divinities and walked freely all around Earth. Wherever there were vines, forests, caves, mountains, or lagoons, you could find the nymphs there. The nymphs took care of the plants and animals in the land. They offered protection to all the living things that thrived, from the soil to a beautiful display of different colors and shapes. A variety of nymphs existed. For instance, there were wind nymphs who flew with the winds and sailed far away. There were the flower nymphs and the nymphs that chose water to be their purpose in life in the form of a spring or fountain. There were the forest nymphs that surrounded themselves with trees. Come to think of it, there were hundreds and hundreds of nymphs, too many to mention them all. Mother Earth was graced by their nurture and charm, and in turn created a beautiful world. Daphne cared for the water. She embodied both the agitation and tranquility of water. As she moved along the river, she expanded it in many different directions, creating life for the land and adding charm to everything. The sun was able to reflect itself in that water regardless of which direction the river journeyed. It was through this reflection that Apollo first gazed at Daphne. One spring morning, Apollo was flying on his chariot, high up above the clouds, and decided to pay the dazzling Daphne a visit and ask her if she would like to be friends. She was playing in the water, tossing rocks and floating on the river. Her hair flowed perfectly on the water, with her, and the rays of the sun highlighted her smile. This was the first time he saw her face to face, instead of the reflection of the water, and he adored her jovial and playful nature. However, duty called, and as the day wore on, he sped his chariot across the sky from one end of the earth to the other, all the while thinking of Daphne's smile that morning. It was inexplicably impossible to get out of his mind. Apollo recounted this to his friend, and they informed him about something he had not known. Daphne had a few quirks and rarely interacted with gods, for she did not like boys that were too full of themselves and could not talk the language of empathy, love, and self-reflection. She was committed to her work and would not let anything get in the way of taking care of her water. No human nor God could distract her from this process. Therefore, she would never accept to be a friend of a god. His friends told Apollo they had tried in the past, but they told him Daphne wanted to be just like Diana, the goddess of the moon. Diana served the universe as a celestial champion and did not concern herself with minuscule things like getting a boy's affections. As such, Daphne vowed to marry no one, and to uphold this, she denied her warm friendship to boys, be it a mortal or a god. That's right, all boys were banned from her life. However, Apollo being Apollo, he thought it would be easy for him to convince Daphne otherwise. Apollo cried out to Daphne to get attention the next day as he passed by her river. Daphne looked up and spotted Apollo and rolled her eyes. He was spinning and doing other tricks on his chariot, trying to impress everyone. The moves were epic and left a trail of fire that vanished after 5 seconds. Still, she was not impressed. Apollo called out to Daphne again and invited her to ride with him. She ignored him. From that day onward, Apollo tried to get Daphne's attention, but she paid no mind. Desperate, Apollo decided to look for Dionysus, god of the grape harvest, pleasure, and madness. He wanted Dionysus to help him make a grape juice so enjoyable that Daphne would agree to spend hours talking, playing, riding on his chariot, and reciting poetry together. while they sipped on the sweet concoction. It was said that a few sips of Dionysus potions made creatures go mad and experience great pleasure with those around them, even if they were just peeling onions. Apollo thought this would for sure make him likable in the eyes of Daphne. When Apollo found Dionysus, he was sitting in the middle of the theatron, cleaning his sock and busket masks. He was preparing for a play. He took great care of these masks, since theater was a favorite pastime in ancient Greece and brought great pleasure to its residents. Sometimes, a touching play could have the power of changing people or making them more vulnerable and humane. It was a window to fantastic lives and a myriad of life lessons. Other times, they were a welcome distraction from worldly perils and struggles. Plays were good entertainment. In ancient Greek theater, drama was depicted with two masks. Melpomene was the muse of tragedy, and Thalia was the muse of comedy. They were crucial in plays. This did not prevent Apollo from mocking Dionysus, for he considered the masks playthings of no relevance, and he laughed when he found Dionysus fervently polishing the masks. "Why do you waste your time with those masks? No one would want to see your plays, not even your own mortal mother. If you ever want a good turnout, have me present, and I would gladly play the lyre while reciting poetry. That would surely bring more people in," said Apollo arrogantly. Dionysus remained calm, for he had just drank a few sips from his favorite vintage wine and was not about to let the sun god ruin his mood. But he wanted to teach Apollo a lesson. He was tired of Apollo always thinking himself superior to everyone. So he went to the concession stand, grabbed a cauldron, and started making grape juice. After bringing it to a boil, he added some fresh mint and let it cool. He bottled it up and placed it on a basket with a bow. "Here you go, Apollo. Isn't this why you came? There. I even made it look beautiful for Daphne's viewing pleasure," he said. Apollo thanked him, and off he went in search of Daphne. There she was, dashing as always, dancing by the river. The sun god offered his salutations, and as expected, Daphne turned and pretended not to hear him. "I just brought you some refreshment. Today the rays of the sun will penetrate more heavily, and the heat will be stronger. I just want you to be hydrated. Nothing more, said Apollo, and left. Only once she was certain that Apollo had left her presence did she turn back to grab the drink from the basket. She was indeed thirsty, and she figured there was no harm in accepting a god's gift, for she did not need to engage him. Besides, it was unsolicited, and she was not bound to reciprocity. She owed him nothing. So she drank it all at once, not realizing it was composed of grapes. She was highly allergic to grapes and started having a reaction to it. Still, it was a special Dionysus concoction, so the allergy would not be deadly. It would make her experience something opposite to pleasure. She would experience agony whenever she was in the presence of the being closest to her. This meant Apollo because he never left. He was watching from afar as he hid behind a tree. Dionysus had known Daphne was allergic to grapes and the effect it would have on her all along. Apollo was set up. To understand the gravity of this, you need to understand Apollo at that time. Back in the time when this story was set, Apollo was still just a young man. He'd yet to experience the wonders of love and all its complexities. We all know that experiencing love for the first time is quite a remarkable journey. Apollo was overtaken with passionate love, just like how the sea engulfs the sand during a tide. Every day the sun's chariot journeyed on as he thought about Daphne's beauty. The waves kept carrying the water back to the shore, and he just kept pondering about her beauty until his ride had ended. The flames of his passion burned bright as his chariot raced through the night sky. Though the wind had called him away, her image still lingered in his thoughts. The combination of longing and passion within his heart had become a wildfire. As the sun set and the night breeze blew in, he thought of her endlessly. Daphne stayed with him through his thoughts, even when he lay asleep in bed. She was constantly on his mind, even though it seemed impossible for someone like her to control a deity. Unfortunately, their love was never to be. Daphne dropped the goblet from which she was drinking from and looked disoriented. So Apollo hurriedly went to her side. He wanted to feel the warmth of her lips against his, run his fingers through her hair, and lie in the golden grass with her. Tell her all would be okay as long as they had each other. Daphne took one look at him and started shaking and muttering, She was repulsed by his mere presence. Her senses became more acute and could not stand his touch or smell. She felt nauseous and a hard thudding in the chest from an increased heart rate, and took her hands to her chest. She took off running while screaming in horror. Disheartened, he ran after her. Daphne didn't know what to do. She ran and ran, being mindful of the leaves of trees and dodging their branches. She skipped their roots and would throw herself whenever she found herself on a hill, to roll down undetected to the bottom, hoping Apollo would lose track of her. He did not, and was in fact a few feet away. Before he could reach her, Daphne heard him make his way and quickly turned around. She looked at him straight in the eyes, which made him come to a halt. "Apollo, please stay back," warned Daphne. He responded, "I am not here to do you harm, but to love you. I solemnly swear that all of my affection will be devoted to you and no one else, even if I have the power to conquer the whole world. Your beauty has captivated me, and all I want to do is show you my affection by kissing you." He moved closer to caress her hair. However, as soon as Daphne heard his words, she started running away. Fear intensified her speed, much like love powered Apollo. The more he chased, the faster she ran, with her heart pounding and hair flowing in the wind. He was not on her heels, his chariot gaining momentum. Daphne could sense Apollo's presence behind her and quickened her pace, running as fast as she could. She ran faster and faster until she was almost flying away. She kept going until she eventually reached the water's edge, where she let out a desperate plea for help. She was calling out to her father Peneus, the river god, begging him to save her from Apollo. Peneus was filled with sorrow upon seeing his daughter struggle against one of the most powerful beings there ever was. And if love motivated him, then his power would be even more indomitable. He was aware of what had to be done in order to save his precious daughter. Her wings would have to be bound. She could not return to her prior carefree state, roving the woods and dipping into the rivers, nor roam free anymore. To protect her from Apollo's advances, he decided he transformed her into a laurel tree. This was the only way he could guarantee that she would remain safe and unscathed. Peleus battled with the difficult decision he had to make, But at the end of the day, he knew it was the right thing to do for his daughter's well-being. As Apollo stepped closer to Daphne, he tried to touch her arm and tug her towards him. Suddenly, the skin of her arm began to transform. It turned dry and dark like a tree bark. Surprised by his sudden change, Apollo could only marvel at it. She paused, ready to look back at him. His gaze swept over her lithe and slender legs, admiring the way they stretched out like roots splaying outwards until they reached the earth and dug deep into it. His stomach churned as he looked into Daphne's eyes and saw a swirling mix of emotions that he couldn't quite comprehend. She felt despair, yes, but also relief. His heart skipped a beat as he was struck by the intensity of her gaze, and it was filled with an inexplicable longing to understand what was happening. As his eyes met hers, he was transfixed. He could not believe what he was seeing. Her face seemed to be slowly changing before him, morphing into something unrecognizable. He felt a strange mix of shock and awe that left him mesmerized, unable to look away. He watched as her long, luscious blonde locks danced and billowed in the wind. He cherished each strand like a jewel and felt mesmerized by its wild beauty transforming into the shapes of leaves and branches. He watched in admiration as her long, luscious blonde locks danced and billowed in the wind. He cherished each strand like a jewel and felt mesmerized by its wild beauty transforming into the shapes of leaves and branches. He could still hear her voice even though her lips were sealed and she was motionless. I can never love you, Apollo, not the way you feel for me. I am a child of the earth, rooted in it, and always linked to it. So this is where I will stay now. Apollo recoiled in shock at the sound of this voice. He looked on with disbelief as the young nymph changed in front of him, from a girl to a laurel tree with its lush green leaves, strong branches, and a trunk deeply rooted in the ground. He attempted to embrace her, yet she didn't feel as soft as before. He moved closer to hug her, even when the woody branches pricked his fingers. Despite everything, he felt a deep appreciation for the tree with its lush green leaves. As an act of admiration, he carefully plucked a few of the leaves and branches to form a crown which he put on his head. Despite the sharp branches poking him, he stepped closer to Daphne for an embrace. Seeing that she couldn't be his wife, he declared lovingly, Daphne, you will be my tree. You are my beloved laurel. I will cherish you forever and keep you close to my heart, filling my days with thoughts of you. Daphne heard Apollo's words, but a comforting feeling of serenity filled her heart, knowing that her father had listened to her and granted her the chance to stay near the earth. Daphne had a great capacity to love, yet she wanted her own autonomy and refused to be touched in a manner she did not wish to. She was liberated both spiritually and emotionally and believed herself to be free. Although unable to freely roam like before, she was eternally connected to the land. She cherished the fact that no other being can take possession of her. She will be grounded to the earth, and no one else will ever have any control over her. She was now able to embrace freedom, just like the moon, something that everyone admired but couldn't control. She looked up to her heroine, Diana, and smiled as she experienced a newfound independence. Apollo had to continue his life despite this reality. And of course, he did find love in other women, even goddesses. Despite his many subsequent loves, Apollo never forgot about Daphne and the moment he fell in love with her. As a reminder of their special bond, he always adorned himself with a laurel wreath. From that moment on, the gods of Mount Olympus bestowed laurel crowns upon those who completed a task with distinction. This crown signified beauty and glory, serving as a reminder of the achievements gained. It should be noted that from that day on, all creatures, immortal or not, did not dare to poke fun at the god of desire. They would not make that same mistake Apollo once did in ancient Greece. Thank you for joining me. I do wish that when you fall in love, the sentiment is reciprocated with the same passion and intensity felt in your heart. Sweet dreams.